My name is Julie Hollis, and I'm a geologist living and working in Greenland. This presentation is about a geology podcasting project, Polar Podcasts, which I used to assess audience engagement with science through oral storytelling. To begin with background, if we think about communication of academic science, it is formal, objective, analytical, and it is used to communicate explicit knowledge. In contrast to this style of communication, humans by nature make sense of their experiences of the world by using stories or narrative. In other words, by ordering experiences into a series of related events in a time sequence. In contrast to other styles of communication, such as an expository style, narrative is more engaging, enjoyable, memorable, persuasive, and more quickly and fully comprehended. When used in science communication, stories can emphasize the human aspects of science, such as emotion, coherence, and meaning. Look at these quotes from Ben Lilly, host of Story Collider. With stories, that's how people remember the facts. And at TED, we find that the talks with strong emotion tend to perform best in terms of viewing numbers by quite a lot. An advantage of oral storytelling as an engagement method is that by listening to a story, the listener necessarily places him or herself in the shoes of the storyteller, becoming aware of their perspective, which is known as cognitive perspective taking, and is particularly able to empathize and sympathize, particularly when the storyteller speaks with emotion. Key aspects of the engaging effect of storytelling are thought to be mental simulation, which means becoming immersed or lost in the story, and becoming empathetically connected with the narrator or characters, or in other words, becoming emotionally engaged. And this engagement is important in the context of science communication because such storytelling of science can provide valuable insights into personal inspiration, controversy, and varying practice within a broad social context. And oral history gets to the heart of what drives and motivates scientists, as noted in reporting by the British Library in relation to the use of oral history in science communication. The case study, Polar Podcasts, grew from a pilot podcasting project. The theme of the podcasts is the exploration and discovery of Greenland's geology, based on audio interviews harnessing the rich memories, knowledge, and experience of 6 career Greenland geologists. The pilot comprised 6 podcast episodes, 1 from each interviewee, selected from a total of 31 episodes that are now being publicly released as a full series online. While the style of storytelling varied between the 6 narrators, all employed a narrative of some kind with varying degrees of emotion. And through editing of the recorded material, I enhanced the narrative nature of each episode. I'll now play the teaser for the series to give you an idea of the style and the content of the podcasts. Welcome to Polar Podcasts, where you'll hear stories from geologists who've spent their careers, their lives, exploring and studying the remarkable and remote geology of Greenland. Why did they become fascinated with Greenland? What were the problems and the discoveries that drove them? And what was it like working in these remote places, where few people venture, even now? Over the coming weeks, you'll hear from 6 of the many geologists who have devoted their research and exploration careers to Greenland.
We were left on our own for the best part of 3 months. 1 geologist and a field assistant. So basically field assistants were, paired with a geologist for life, shall we say.
And it got really rough. We got to a stage when you lost all visible contact between the sea and air. There was nothing except moving water. And then we took a big one green, which smashed the window in the wheelhouse. My first thought, I haven't written a will.
We were also, in fact, invited to China as early as in 1981. They had a Ministry for Uranium Exploration with 50,000 employed people. And I was thinking of our small uranium exploration unit in the survey with 2 people at that time.
And I had a pistol there on my pillow, and I managed to get the pistol out, carefully unzipped the door of the tent and looked out, and there was a bear with his snout about a foot away from me.
And there were thousands of geese, and they were making those geese noise, you know. The whole valley was full of it, and I remember waking up, coming out of my tent one morning, they were all gone. And it was so quiet.
What is of great value for the survey now? They have old hands like Stuart Watts, Feiko Kalsbeck and myself. We are all from 1933, acting as survey's memory.
Join me each week to hear stories of the exploration of Greenland's geology from the 50s to the present through the lives of geologists who have experienced places that few people ever will. I'm Julie Hollis, and this is Polar Podcasts. To test how and what listeners engaged with in the podcasts, I asked a science-curious test audience of 15 people to complete an online survey about the podcasts. All of the test audience had an interest in, but varying knowledge of Greenland and geology. I received a total of 75 completed responses for individual episodes. The language used in the survey responses I qualitatively analysed against science communication and engagement literature to assess the degree of engagement of the audience and what they were engaging with. Specifically, I used the classifications of Bussell and Belancik 2009 and Sinatra et al. 2015 to assess engagement, specifically in the form of narrative engagement. The 3 dominant kinds of engagement demonstrated from the audience responses were narrative presence, agentic engagement, and emotional engagement. Narrative presence is the sensation of leaving the actual world and entering the story. Examples related to narrative presence included: I felt part of the conversation. It felt like being in the room, and I was on the edge of my seat. Agentic engagement is exertion of the listener's agency by personalizing the experience. Examples include responses such as, this episode made me reflect on my own experiences as a geologist. I thought about my own experiences doing fieldwork, and the descriptions were very relatable. And finally, emotional engagement is emotional arousal, sympathy, or empathy with characters. Example responses include, I was surprisingly moved. I felt a sense of awe, and I had a surge of adrenaline. While this was a small test audience, the results agree with engagement literature that narrative presence, the degree to which listeners felt lost in the story, and emotional are powerful in engaging audiences, as is agentic engagement, the degree to which listeners were able to personally relate to the stories. The full podcast series is now being released and will continue to air weekly until January. Through the course of the series airing, I hope to extend the qualitative surveying and also use quantitative social media usage and demographic data to further assess the effectiveness of narrative podcasts in engaging audiences with science. If you'd like to contribute to this further study, then please listen either through the website or through any major podcasting apps, and answer the type form survey on the website shown at the top of this slide. Thank you for listening.